Royal Guard forced open Camilla's wardrobe and discovered the late Queen's coronation robe. The air carried a certain heaviness, one that had settled over the palace since the passing of the late Queen. Courtiers moved through the halls with muted steps, whispering to one another in hushed tones. The legacy of the late Queen was still very much alive, and everyone knew that the days ahead would be filled with careful ceremonies, solemn decisions, and the delicate balance of tradition. Camilla had spent the morning attending to her official duties. The role of a royal was never simple, and in the months following her elevated position, every step she took seemed to be watched, analyzed, and discussed. Though she had grown accustomed to the demands, there were moments, especially in private, when the weight of history pressed down on her. Today, however, she was not in the palace. She had gone to oversee a charitable event, leaving her chambers in the hands of the palace staff and security. It was during this time that the Royal Guard began a routine inventory check. The palace maintained strict protocols for the care of its historical artifacts and personal belongings of the royals. Every room, every closet, and every drawer had to be accounted for, especially now, with the late Queen's possessions under closer scrutiny. One senior guard, Thomas, had been assigned to Camilla's quarters. Thomas was a disciplined, conscientious man in his early 40s, known among the staff for his careful attention to detail. He had served the palace for over 20 years and had seen many unusual things, but nothing prepared him for what he was about to find. The guard moved through Camilla's chambers systematically, noting each item on his inventory sheet. The room itself reflected Camilla's understated elegance. A mix of classical furnishings, soft fabrics, and carefully arranged personal items gave the space a warm, lived-in feel. Despite the grandeur of the palace, this room felt intimate, a place where she could retreat from the constant attention of the public eye. As Thomas approached a large, antique wardrobe in the corner of the room, he noticed that the lock was slightly unusual. It was old-fashioned, sturdy, and seemed resistant, almost as if it had not been opened in years. According to the inventory list, there were important items recorded behind this particular door, and protocol required him to access them. He tried the key, carefully inserted and turned, but the lock refused to yield. A sense of unease mixed with curiosity filled Thomas. He knew that forcing a lock was never ideal, but the instructions were clear. Ensure all items were accounted for. With careful precision and respect for the royal property, he retrieved the necessary tools. Each movement was deliberate, conscious of the fact that he was handling items that belonged to the royal family, each carrying a story, a memory, and the weight of tradition. Finally, with a gentle but firm application of force, the lock clicked. The door creaked open, revealing the contents inside. At first glance, it seemed to be a collection of garments, robes, and carefully folded fabrics. But then, something extraordinary caught Thomas's eye. Among the neatly arranged items was a piece of history, shimmering with intricate embroidery and subtle grandeur. It was immediately recognizable to him, though he had never expected to see it here. It was the late Queen's coronation robe. The robe was magnificent. Its deep, rich fabric carried the weight of generations. The embroidery glimmered softly, catching the light in a way that made the piece seem alive. Precious threads of gold and silver intertwined with delicate patterns, each stitch a testament to the skill of the artisans who had created it. Small jewels were embedded in the design, glinting like stars against the royal blue and crimson fabric. Every detail spoke of ceremony, power, and the profound symbolism of the monarchy. Thomas stood for a long moment, completely silent. He felt a mixture of awe, respect, and disbelief. How had such a treasured piece ended up here, hidden away in a private wardrobe? Normally, items of this importance were kept in the royal archives, carefully preserved and catalogued. The presence of the coronation robe in Camilla's quarters was both unexpected and mysterious. He carefully lifted the robe, handling it with the utmost respect. The fabric was surprisingly light, yet there was a sense of weight, not physical but symbolic. This was not merely a piece of clothing, it was a part of history, a tangible connection to the late Queen and the traditions of the monarchy. Thomas understood that this discovery was significant, not just for the royal household, but for history itself. Immediately, he called the palace historian and senior advisors. The news traveled quietly but quickly through the palace corridors. Those who were informed approached the wardrobe with a mixture of reverence and curiosity. The coronation robe had never been displayed in such a private setting before. Its discovery raised many questions. Had it been intentionally placed there? Was it Camilla's decision to preserve it in her private quarters, or was it a directive left by the late queen herself? As the advisors examined the robe, they noted its remarkable condition. The fabric had aged gracefully, with no signs of damage or neglect. Each embellishment was intact, the colors still vibrant, and the craftsmanship evident in every stitch. The coronation robe, meant to be worn only during the most important ceremonies, seemed almost magical in its presence. To hold it, to see it, was to hold a piece of royal legacy. The palace staff began to piece together the story. Over the years, various items had been moved quietly within the palace, sometimes to make space in the archives or to protect them during renovations. However, the robe's placement in Camilla's wardrobe suggested more than just convenience. Perhaps it had been a gesture of trust, a symbolic passing of responsibility from the late queen to Camilla. Whatever the reason, it was clear that the wardrobe now held a treasure beyond ordinary value. As the day progressed, Thomas and the palace historians carefully documented the robe's discovery. They photographed it, recorded its details, and noted its precise condition. Every step was taken with meticulous care. In the corridors outside, staff whispered among themselves, aware that they had witnessed something remarkable. The coronation robe was not just a garment. It was a symbol of continuity, a reminder that the monarchy's history lived on through tangible objects and through the people entrusted to preserve them. Meanwhile, Camilla, unaware of the unfolding discovery, continued with her engagements. She had no idea that a piece of the late queen's history rested quietly in her private quarters, waiting to be rediscovered. Later, when informed, she would reflect on the honor and responsibility of being entrusted with such a legacy. The moment emphasized the delicate balance of her role, not only to fulfill her duties in public, but also to safeguard the memories, symbols, and traditions of the monarchy in private. By evening, the coronation robe had been moved temporarily to a secure location within the palace for further inspection. The initial shock and excitement gave way to contemplation. Everyone involved understood that history had quietly revealed itself that morning, and the significance of the discovery would be felt for years to come. The story of a routine wardrobe check turning into a historical revelation was one that would be remembered within palace walls, shared carefully among those with knowledge of the monarchy's inner workings. For Thomas, the royal guard, the day became unforgettable. He had approached his duty with the same discipline as always, never expecting that a simple task could lead to witnessing history firsthand. The coronation robe reminded him, and everyone else, that the monarchy was more than ceremonies, speeches, and public appearances. It was a living history, a tapestry of personal and political legacies interwoven across generations. Each item, each artifact, carried a story, and today, one of the most significant stories had quietly emerged from the shadow of a wardrobe. The quiet of the evening returned to Camilla's chambers. Though the room no longer held the coronation robe, its presence had left a mark. The memory of discovery, the sense of awe, and the understanding of responsibility lingered in the air. In the heart of the palace, amid centuries of tradition and ceremony, a simple wardrobe had reminded everyone that history was never truly dormant. It waited for the right moment, the right observer, to step forward and recognize it. After the initial discovery of the late Queen's coronation robe, the palace was filled with a quiet but intense sense of curiosity. The robe was no ordinary garment. It was a symbol, a connection to a time when the nation had watched the late queen take on the responsibilities of the monarchy. Every stitch, every jewel, and every fold carried meaning, and those who studied it understood that this discovery was far more than a mere accident. It was a link to history itself. The palace historians were called immediately. They were experts in royal artifacts, each with years of experience studying items that held the stories of centuries. Among them was Lady Margaret, a historian with a gentle voice and sharp eyes, known for her deep understanding of royal heritage. She carefully examined the robe, lifting it slightly to inspect the embroidery. She marveled at the intricate patterns, which told stories of both tradition and personal touches by the late queen. "This is extraordinary," Lady Margaret said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Every detail here was chosen with intention. Look at the threads, the gold and silver intertwine with symbols that reflect the monarchy's history. Even the placement of the jewels has meaning. They represent the kingdoms united under the crown, each carefully chosen to honor the past and the future. Other historians gathered around, each taking notes and documenting every observation. They photographed the robe, carefully recording its dimensions and the details of the embroidery. The robe was made of heavy velvet, yet it flowed elegantly, as if it were alive. The design included delicate patterns of flowers, crowns, and national symbols. The most remarkable feature, however, was the way the robe seemed to tell a story of continuity, how the monarchy connected the past, present, and future. The coronation robe had been worn once, during the most significant ceremony in the late queen's life. It had been specially made for that day, a day watched by millions across the world. That moment had marked the beginning of her reign, a day of hope, promise, and duty. The robe had been designed not only to impress visually, but also to convey the weight of responsibility she would carry. It was a powerful symbol, representing her commitment to the nation and her connection to centuries of tradition. As the historians discussed, they also considered the robe's unusual location in Camilla's private quarters. Normally, such items were preserved in the royal archives, carefully stored to protect them from damage. Its presence in a wardrobe suggested that someone had made a conscious decision to keep it there. Perhaps it was a gesture of trust from the late queen, a way of passing on a piece of her legacy quietly to the next generation of royalty. Or perhaps it was Camilla herself who had chosen to keep the robe close, understanding its value not only as an artifact, but as a personal reminder of the history she was now part of. The historians began to look deeper into the symbolism of the robe. Each design element had been carefully chosen to reflect the queen's beliefs, values, and connection to the people. The flowers embroidered along the hem were national symbols, representing the countries under the crown. The tiny crowns stitched into the fabric reminded observers that the monarchy was a living institution, a chain linking the past to the present. The jewels, embedded carefully within the fabric, were not only decorative but also symbolic. They represented prosperity, protection, and unity, key elements of the late queen's reign. Lady Margaret explained to the other historians, "Every coronation robe is unique, but this one is exceptional. The late queen wanted to leave a legacy in every stitch." She wanted future generations to see that leadership is not just about power or ceremony. It's about duty, continuity, and service to the people. That is what this robe represents. The discovery also sparked discussions among palace advisors about how such items should be cared for and displayed. The robe had survived decades, yet it had been kept out of sight for so long that even those who worked closely with the royal family had not seen it. The fact that it was so well preserved in a wardrobe, rather than the controlled environment of the archives, raised questions about the challenges of caring for historical artifacts. How had it remained in such pristine condition? The answer seemed to lie in the care taken by those who had placed it there, and in the protective aura of reverence that surrounded it. Beyond its material beauty, the coronation robe held stories that connected deeply to the people of the nation. For many, it was a reminder of a time when the monarchy played a central role in public life, not just through ceremonies, but through service, guidance, and symbolic leadership. The robe carried a sense of dignity and continuity, embodying ideals that transcended the personal life of the queen. It was a story woven into fabric, a story of commitment, pride, and the quiet strength of tradition. The robe also sparked reflection about the nature of historical preservation. Items like these were more than objects. They were carriers of memory. They allowed future generations to touch, see, and understand the past in ways that words alone could not achieve. The coronation robe, with its beauty and symbolism, provided a bridge to a time of great significance in the nation's history. It reminded those who encountered it that history was not abstract. It was tangible, immediate, and alive. As the day wore on, discussions turned to the personal connection between Camilla and the late queen. Though they had not always been close publicly, the decision to store such an important artifact in Camilla's quarters hinted at trust and respect. Perhaps the late queen had seen in her a steward of history, someone capable of honoring the past while navigating the challenges of the present. The historians speculated quietly, careful not to make assumptions, but it was clear that the robe's presence in Camilla's private space was meaningful. Meanwhile, the palace staff worked meticulously to ensure the robe was protected during its examination. Gloves were worn, and soft surfaces were used to support the fabric. Every movement was deliberate, reflecting the awareness that they were handling not just a piece of cloth, but a living piece of history. The air in the room was filled with quiet reverence, a shared understanding of the robe's significance. Visitors and staff who caught a glimpse of the discussions were awed by the detail and beauty of the robe. Its colors seemed richer in person than in photographs, and the craftsmanship was mesmerizing. People spoke in hushed tones, careful not to disturb the careful work of the historians. There was a sense of wonder, almost as if the robe itself carried a quiet voice, telling the story of a reign filled with dedication, resilience, and grace. The coronation robe also prompted reflection on the ceremonial aspects of monarchy. Such garments were designed to impress, to communicate authority, and to symbolize the weight of leadership. Yet this robe went beyond mere symbolism. It told a personal story. Every element, from the choice of fabric to the placement of jewels, reflected the queen's understanding of her role and the legacy she wished to leave. The robe was both public and private, ceremonial and deeply personal, a perfect reflection of the monarchy itself. As evening approached, the historians continued their careful study, documenting every aspect of the robe. They discussed its potential future. Could it be displayed for public education, or would it remain a private treasure? The consensus was that, for now, the robe would be preserved carefully, its story told through documentation, photographs, and controlled viewings for scholars. Its discovery would not only enhance historical knowledge, but also inspire respect for the care and thoughtfulness behind royal traditions. Even as the day ended, the coronation robe seemed to carry an energy of its own. Those who had handled it felt a connection to the past, a sense of continuity that was both humbling and inspiring. The late queen's choices, her attention to detail, and her understanding of history had left a mark that went far beyond her reign. The robe was a symbol of enduring legacy, a reminder that history is preserved not just in books, but in the careful creation and protection of meaningful objects. In private reflection, Camilla later considered the significance of the discovery. She realized that her role in safeguarding such a piece of history was not merely about ownership or stewardship. It was about understanding the responsibility of connecting the present to the past. The coronation robe, once hidden quietly in her wardrobe, had now revealed itself to the palace and its historians. It reminded everyone that history often waits silently, only to be discovered when the moment is right. For the historians, the guards, and the palace staff, the day became unforgettable. They had witnessed history unfolding in a quiet, respectful manner, and they understood that this event would be remembered not just for the discovery itself, but for the lessons it carried about preservation, care, and reverence. The coronation robe was more than a garment. It was a story, a connection, and a reminder that every generation has a role in honoring the past. As the palace settled into evening calm, the coronation robe rested in its temporary secure location. Though it would return to the archives soon, its story would live on through careful records, photographs, and the memories of those who had been fortunate enough to witness its discovery. In this way, the late queen's legacy continued, not only through her reign, but through the tangible symbols she left behind, preserved carefully for the generations yet to come. News of the coronation robe's discovery spread through the palace almost immediately, moving from the guards and historians to senior advisors, and eventually, to the palace communications office. While the palace carefully maintained discretion, it was impossible to keep such a remarkable event entirely private. Those who had learned of the robe whispered about it in corridors, shared the story with colleagues, and speculated about its significance. By the end of the day, the story had reached the media, and the palace was preparing for the reaction that would inevitably follow. Once the news became public, it caused a wave of curiosity and excitement. Journalists from across the country and even international media outlets sought to learn more about the hidden treasure. Headlines appeared almost immediately, each one highlighting the dramatic nature of the discovery. Words like secret, hidden, and unexpected dominated the articles, capturing the public imagination. People were fascinated not only by the beauty of the robe, but by the story of how it had been found quietly in a private wardrobe rather than in the royal archives. Social media added a new dimension to the story. Platforms buzzed with speculation, commentary, and admiration for the coronation robe. Millions of people commented on its beauty, the craftsmanship, and the symbolism behind it. Some users shared historical facts about the late Queen's reign, connecting the robe to key moments in history. Others speculated about why the robe had been kept in Camilla's private quarters, generating discussions that ranged from thoughtful reflection to playful curiosity. The story became a viral topic almost overnight, showing how history could capture attention in the modern world. Royal commentators and historians were invited to television studios to share their insights. They explained the significance of the coronation robe, describing the intricate embroidery, the jewels, and the symbolic elements embedded in its design. Lady Margaret, the palace historian who had first examined the robe, appeared on a special program to provide context. She explained that every stitch had meaning, from the patterns representing the kingdoms united under the crown to the delicate floral designs symbolizing growth, continuity, and prosperity. "The coronation robe is more than a ceremonial garment," Lady Margaret told the audience. "It is a piece of history, a tangible link to the late Queen's reign. To see it even briefly is to witness the care, thought, and dedication she put into representing her role. Its discovery in a private wardrobe is unusual, but it reminds us that history often exists in unexpected places, waiting to be uncovered." Meanwhile, Camilla faced attention from reporters and the public. While she did not appear publicly to comment immediately, palace officials released a statement emphasizing respect for history and the importance of preserving royal artifacts. They highlighted the care taken by palace staff and historians to document the robe properly and ensure its preservation. The statement also reminded the public that such discoveries were part of the ongoing work of maintaining the monarchy's history and traditions. The discovery also prompted reflection about the relationship between the monarchy and the public. Many people felt a renewed sense of connection to the royal family, inspired by the tangible reminder of history that the robe represented. Letters, emails, and social media messages poured in, expressing admiration for the late Queen, appreciation for the preservation of history, and curiosity about the significance of the coronation robe. People wrote about their memories of the late Queen, her dedication to service, and how seeing her legacy through the robe brought those memories to life. Historians also emphasized the importance of the discovery for education. The coronation robe offered a way for future generations to understand the monarchy, not just through books or lectures, but through a physical artifact that carried meaning across time. Teachers, students, and history enthusiasts began to discuss the robe in classrooms and online forums, using it as a tool to explore the past, understand royal traditions, and reflect on the values represented by the monarchy. The media coverage, however, was not limited to admiration and historical analysis. There was also speculation and debate. Some commentators asked why the robe had been kept in a private wardrobe rather than in the archives. Others wondered whether it had been Camilla's choice to preserve it in her quarters, or whether it had been left there intentionally by the late Queen. These questions sparked thoughtful discussions about trust, stewardship, and the ways in which the monarchy manages its treasures. Despite the curiosity and speculation, the palace maintained control over the narrative. Officials reminded journalists that the focus should be on preservation, history, and respect for the late Queen's legacy. They emphasized that the discovery was a reminder of the monarchy's living history, an example of how even small, quiet moments could reveal stories of significance. The careful communication strategy helped ensure that the public remained engaged, while maintaining the dignity and respect associated with royal artifacts. The coronation robe itself became a symbol in the media, representing continuity, history, and the hidden stories within the royal household. Television programs showed detailed photographs of the embroidery, explained the significance of the colors and patterns, and discussed the ceremonial importance of the garment. Experts highlighted the fact that the robe was worn only once, during the most important ceremony of the Queen's life, emphasizing how unique and valuable it was. The public learned not only about the beauty of the robe, but also about the traditions and symbolism of the monarchy, connecting with history in a way that felt immediate and tangible. Social media, in particular, amplified the story. Millions of users shared their thoughts, creating threads that explored historical facts, personal reflections, and even hypothetical scenarios about the robe's significance. Some posts celebrated Camilla's role in preserving the artifact, praising her for safeguarding a piece of history. Others focused on the late queen's legacy, reflecting on her reign and the symbolic importance of the coronation robe. These online discussions created a sense of shared experience, allowing people from different parts of the world to connect over a story rooted in tradition and history. As the story continued to unfold, experts began writing articles and essays analyzing the robe's design, symbolism, and historical context. Academic journals and popular magazines alike featured in-depth pieces explaining the craftsmanship, the significance of the materials, and the historical moments associated with the late queen's coronation. Scholars highlighted how discoveries like this were rare, showing that even within the palace, there were stories waiting to be uncovered that could shed new light on the monarchy and its traditions. The public reaction was not limited to fascination and admiration. There were also moments of reflection. Many people considered what it meant to preserve history, to protect artifacts, and to maintain a connection to the past. The coronation robe reminded the public that history was not just about dates and events, but about tangible objects, stories, and the people who carried them forward. It inspired conversations about responsibility, continuity, and the value of traditions in a rapidly changing world. Camilla herself became a central figure in the story, though quietly. While she did not seek public attention, her role as the guardian of the robe was acknowledged by palace officials and historians. She was seen as someone capable of bridging the past and the present, ensuring that the legacy of the late queen was respected, while also taking responsibility for the history now entrusted to her. For many in the public, this added a human dimension to the story, connecting the ceremonial significance of the robe with the personal responsibilities of those who care for history. Over time, the coronation robe became more than a subject of curiosity. It became a symbol of unity and continuity. People discussed it in schools, universities, and community groups, exploring its meaning and the broader lessons it represented. The robe showed that history could be found in unexpected places, and that every generation had a role in preserving the past while preparing for the future. Its discovery encouraged thoughtful reflection, admiration, and a renewed sense of connection to the monarchy's traditions. Even months later, the story of the coronation robe continued to capture public attention. Documentaries were produced, featuring interviews with palace historians, guards, and staff who had been involved in its discovery. They shared behind-the-scenes insights into how the robe was preserved, documented, and studied. Viewers were drawn to the story, captivated by the combination of history, mystery, and the human element involved in safeguarding royal artifacts. The robe also inspired a sense of pride among those who worked in the palace. Guards, staff, and historians alike felt honored to have been part of the discovery and preservation process. They understood that history often unfolded in quiet ways, and that their careful attention to detail could make a significant difference. The coronation robe served as a reminder that even small actions, when taken with care and respect, could preserve stories that would endure for generations. For the wider public, the coronation robe became a bridge to the past. People were able to connect with history in a way that felt immediate and personal. They saw the care taken in preserving the monarchy's traditions, understood the symbolism embedded in royal garments, and reflected on the responsibilities of those who safeguard history. The discovery of the robe transformed from a simple inventory check into a story of legacy, connection, and the enduring power of history to inspire, educate, and unite people across generations. In the end, the coronation robe's discovery was more than a news story. It was a moment that brought together history, symbolism, and public curiosity in a way that few artifacts ever could. It reminded the world that even in modern times, the past has a way of revealing itself when least expected. The robe connected people to a significant moment in history, invited reflection on leadership and duty, and inspired admiration for the craftsmanship, care, and legacy that had gone into its creation. Through the media coverage, social media conversations, and public discussions, the Coronation Robe became a shared story, one that transcended its physical form. It carried lessons about responsibility, preservation, and respect for history. It highlighted the dedication of those who work behind the scenes to maintain the monarchy's heritage, and it encouraged a deeper appreciation for the symbols that connect generations. As the story settled into public consciousness, the Coronation Robe became a timeless reminder. Its discovery, though accidental, illuminated the importance of history in everyday life, showing that the past is never truly lost. It waits to be discovered, understood, and appreciated. In this way, the robe's journey from a hidden wardrobe to the center of public attention was not just a story about a royal artifact. It was a story about connection, continuity, and the enduring power of history to inspire, educate, and captivate. After the excitement of the discovery and the flurry of media attention, the palace slowly settled into a quieter rhythm. The Coronation Robe, which had captured the curiosity and admiration of people across the world, was now safely stored in the palace archives. Carefully preserved in a climate-controlled environment, the robe would remain protected for generations to come. But even in its new, secure location, the robe's story continued to unfold, not just as a piece of royal history, but as a symbol of legacy, responsibility, and reflection. Camilla, who had played an unexpected role in this chapter of history, spent time reflecting on the meaning of the Coronation Robe. Though she had initially been unaware of its presence in her private quarters, she now understood the significance of her stewardship. The robe was more than a garment. It was a tangible connection to the late queen, to the traditions of the monarchy, and to the responsibility of preserving history for future generations. Camilla realized that her role in caring for the robe was part of a duty that extended beyond public appearances and ceremonial obligations. For Camilla, the discovery offered a moment of introspection. She thought about the life of the late queen, her dedication, and the meticulous attention to detail that had gone into every aspect of her reign. The coronation robe, carefully designed and embroidered, reflected the queen's commitment not only to her role as a monarch, but to the people she served. It was a reminder that leadership required thoughtfulness, foresight, and a respect for tradition. The robe embodied these qualities in a way that words alone could not convey. Palace historians continued their study of the coronation robe, documenting every detail and ensuring that its story was preserved. They recorded the intricate embroidery, the placement of jewels, and the significance of every symbol. Each stitch told a story of the monarchy, connecting the present to the past, and offering insights into the values and priorities of the late queen. The historians understood that the robe was not just a historical artifact. It was a teaching tool, a source of inspiration, and a reminder of the enduring nature of the monarchy. The discovery also inspired reflection among palace staff and the royal guard. Those who had been involved in uncovering the robe understood that their work went beyond routine duties. They were participants in a story that connected generations, a story that demonstrated how careful attention, respect, and dedication could preserve history. For many, the experience reinforced the idea that every action mattered, and that even seemingly small tasks could have lasting significance. As time passed, the coronation robe became a symbol of continuity and heritage. Scholars and historians wrote extensively about its discovery, analyzing its design, symbolism, and cultural significance. They emphasized that the robe represented more than the life of one monarch. It reflected the values of a nation, the traditions of the monarchy, and the enduring connection between past and present. Academic conferences, journal articles, and public lectures featured the robe as a case study in preservation, historical interpretation, and the importance of artifacts in understanding history. The public, too, continued to engage with the story. Museums, schools, and cultural institutions referenced the robe in educational programs, highlighting the artistry, symbolism, and historical context of the coronation ceremony. Teachers used the story as an opportunity to discuss leadership, tradition, and responsibility with students, emphasizing that history is not only written in books, but also preserved in objects and memories. The coronation robe became a tangible example of how the past could inform the present and inspire the future. Camilla herself embraced the responsibility of preserving history with quiet dignity. She recognized that the coronation robe was not merely a piece of clothing, but a link to the values, legacy, and vision of the late queen. By ensuring that it was cared for properly, she contributed to the continuity of the monarchy and the preservation of cultural heritage. In doing so, she honored the past while fulfilling her role in the present, a role that required thoughtfulness, respect, and an understanding of history's enduring power. The coronation robe also became a source of personal reflection for many who encountered its story. People thought about the lives of those who had created it, the artisans who had embroidered each stitch, the designers who had carefully chosen fabrics and colors, and the queen herself, who had worn it during a moment of great significance. The robe was a reminder that history is shaped not only by leaders and rulers, but also by countless individuals who contribute their skill, care, and creativity to the preservation of culture and tradition. As the palace prepared for future ceremonies and public events, the coronation robe remained a symbol of careful stewardship. Officials and staff emphasized the importance of maintaining high standards of preservation, documentation, and respect for royal artifacts. The discovery of the robe had highlighted the delicate balance between accessibility and protection, showing that history could be both shared and safeguarded. This lesson became central to the way the palace managed its collections, ensuring that future generations would have the opportunity to connect with the past in meaningful ways. The coronation robe also inspired broader discussions about legacy and responsibility. Scholars, writers, and public figures reflected on the importance of preserving cultural heritage and respecting the contributions of previous generations. The robe's story became an example of how history could be rediscovered and appreciated in unexpected ways, offering lessons about continuity, duty, and the careful stewardship of valuable traditions. Its presence in Camilla's private quarters, once hidden from view, reminded everyone that history often exists quietly, waiting to be noticed and understood. For the public, the coronation robe represented more than royal tradition. It became a symbol of connection and inspiration. People imagined the moment when the late queen wore it, reflecting on the gravity and beauty of the coronation ceremony. They considered the artistry involved in creating the garment and the symbolism embedded in every detail. The robe offered a tangible link to the past, inviting reflection on leadership, responsibility, and the passage of time. It reminded people that history is alive, present in objects, stories, and the actions of those who care for them. The discovery also encouraged a deeper appreciation for the quiet work of preservation. Historians, conservators, and palace staff demonstrated that safeguarding history requires patience, dedication, and meticulous care. Their efforts ensured that the coronation robe would not only survive, but also be understood and appreciated for its full significance. This careful stewardship reinforced the idea that history is not static. It is maintained through attention, respect, and thoughtful action. Camilla's role in this process became a personal reflection on her responsibilities as a member of the royal family. She understood that her position was not only about public appearances, charitable work, and ceremonial duties. It was also about preserving history, respecting tradition, and ensuring that the legacy of those who came before her was honored. The coronation robe symbolized this responsibility, connecting her directly to the late queen and to the broader history of the monarchy. Over time, the coronation robe became more than a subject of study or a news story. It became a symbol of inspiration. Artists, designers, and students explored its design, drawing lessons from its craftsmanship and symbolism. Writers and historians used it as a reference point for essays, articles, and lectures, examining its role in the broader context of royal traditions and ceremonial history. The robe had moved from a private wardrobe to a position of public significance, influencing thought, education, and reflection in countless ways. The coronation robe also served as a reminder that legacy is not limited to objects. It is carried through actions, decisions, and stewardship. Those who had discovered, preserved, and studied the robe had contributed to a chain of responsibility extending across generations. Their careful attention ensured that the story of the late queen, her reign, and her values would continue to be appreciated and understood. The robe symbolized the enduring power of history to connect people, inspire reflection, and teach lessons about duty, service, and respect for the past. Even in quiet moments, the coronation robe continued to speak to those who encountered it. Its colors, patterns, and jewels reflected centuries of tradition, while its presence reminded people that history is alive and meaningful. It invited reflection on the choices of leaders, the work of artisans, and the dedication of those who preserve culture. The robe became a touchstone for understanding how the past shapes the present and influences the future. As the palace continued its daily rhythm, the coronation robe remained a symbol of continuity and legacy. It represented the connection between generations, the importance of careful stewardship, and the value of history in everyday life. Its discovery in a private wardrobe had transformed it from a hidden treasure into a powerful symbol, one that inspired admiration, reflection, and understanding. The story of the coronation robe demonstrated that even in a world of modern technology and rapid change, history remains meaningful, tangible, and capable of inspiring people across generations. For Camilla, the coronation robe became a quiet companion in her role, a reminder that she was entrusted not only with ceremonial duties, but also with the care of history itself. The robe reflected the past, guided the present, and would inspire future generations, embodying the values, dedication, and legacy of the late queen. Its journey from hidden wardrobe to historical treasure was a story of responsibility, reverence, and the enduring power of tradition. In the end, the coronation robe was more than a royal garment. It was a symbol of continuity, a link between generations, and a reminder of the care and thoughtfulness that sustain history. Its discovery, preservation, and study illuminated the enduring significance of the monarchy, the dedication of those who maintain its traditions, and the profound impact of history on our understanding of the present. The robe, once hidden quietly in a wardrobe, had become a timeless emblem of legacy, reflection, and the enduring power of history to inspire, educate, and connect people across generations.